She learned very early that being quiet made life easier. On the great orbital station that circled a pale blue star, silence was not unusual. Many species preferred stillness, efficiency, or distance, but for her people, silence was more than a habit. It was law, tradition, and safety all in one. Her kind believed that attention was dangerous. They were not weak. They were not small. They were simply different. Their minds felt things before they understood them. Emotions moved through them like invisible currents, subtle but powerful. Because of that, they had learned long ago that standing out brought fear and fear brought destruction. So they stayed unnoticed. She did everything she was taught to do. She followed schedules. She recorded data. She observed without comment. She lowered her eyes during council meetings and kept her thoughts folded neatly inside herself. Still, she was ignored, not hated, not punished, just unseen. Her assigned role aboard the station was observation support. It meant she watched interactions between species, recorded emotional patterns, and submitted reports that no one ever read fully. The position existed mostly because someone had decided it should. It gave her people representation without giving them a voice. Most cycles passed the same way. Ships arrived. Ships departed. Councils argued in polished words while tension gathered in places no sensor could detect. She felt those tensions clearly, like pressure building behind thin glass. She tried to warn them once. During a small advisory session, she quietly suggested that 2 trade delegations were nearing emotional collapse. Not violent collapse, but something worse. Distrust, humiliation, long memory. Her own supervisor corrected her gently in front of everyone. "Your assessment is intuitive," they said, using the word like an apology. "We require measurable data." After that, she stopped speaking unless spoken to. She told herself it was fine. Observation was enough. Feeling was enough. Someone else would act. But the feelings kept growing. On the day the human arrived, she noticed him before anyone else did. He stepped off the transport platform with an awkward pause, as if unsure whether he was supposed to stand still or move forward. His clothes were simple, his posture relaxed but alert. He looked around openly, not just scanning for threats or authority, but really looking. Most new arrivals did not do that. They focused on rank, on rules, on survival. The human seemed curious. She felt it immediately. A warm, searching awareness, like someone opening a window in a sealed room. It startled her enough that she almost missed recording his arrival time. He smiled at a station official and thanked them for directions. Thanked them, not as a formality, but like he meant it. She did not understand why that unsettled her so much. Over the next few cycles, she saw him often. He was assigned as a cultural liaison, a role that required listening more than speaking. Many species thought that made humans unimportant. They were wrong. He asked questions no one else asked, not about power structures or military limits, but about habits, about small customs, about what made people uncomfortable and why. He did not interrupt. He did not rush. And somehow, eventually, his attention landed on her. It happened during a shared observation period in one of the station's common exchange halls. She was recording ambient emotional levels, standing quietly near the edge of the space as she always did. He noticed her hesitation when 2 species passed each other too closely. "You felt that too, didn't you?" he said softly. She froze. No one had ever asked her that before. "I record fluctuations," she replied carefully. He nodded, not pushing. "That's not what I meant, but okay." Then he surprised her again. "Thank you for being here," he said. Most people don't realize how much work goes into keeping a place like this calm. No one had ever thanked her for that either. After that, he greeted her when he saw her. Just a nod, sometimes a brief word. Nothing that would draw attention. Nothing that would get her in trouble, but he saw her. She began to notice him noticing others too. He paid attention to those who were overlooked, maintenance crews, minor delegates, translators who never spoke for themselves. Humans, she learned, had a strange habit of treating everyone like they mattered until proven otherwise. The station did not know what to do with that. Tension rose quietly. Trade negotiations stalled. Delegations smiled while resentment pooled underneath. Security reports showed no threat, but she felt the strain growing sharper, heavier. She submitted another report, carefully worded: emotional misalignment, risk of long-term conflict. No response. Then the system's failure happened. It was not dramatic. No alarms at first. Just small errors stacking up. Environmental controls lagged. Translation systems misread tone. A delayed response here, a misunderstanding there. Enough to push fragile interactions closer to breaking. In the main council chamber, voices rose, not shouting but tightening. Words became sharper, pride hardened. She stood near the wall, heart racing, feeling the emotional surge like a storm pressing against glass. If nothing changed, this would not end today, but it would end badly. Without fully deciding to, she stepped forward. She adjusted a minor environmental setting, recalibrated emotional dampeners in the chamber, and altered seating distances based on instinct rather than protocol. The room changed. Not suddenly, not obviously, but the pressure eased, voices softened. A pause appeared where anger had been building. The council continued, unaware of what had nearly happened. No one acknowledged her, except the human. He met her eyes from across the chamber, understanding clear on his face. After the session ended, he approached her quietly. "That was you, wasn't it?" he asked. She hesitated, admitting it could bring consequences. "I acted within my assigned parameters," she said carefully. He smiled, not triumphant, just impressed. "You stopped something worse from happening." She did not know how to respond to that. "You should have been credited," he added. "I'm going to mention it." Fear shot through her. "Please don't," she said quickly. "It's safer if," he paused, really looking at her now. "Is it?" he asked gently. She did not have an answer. Later, during a minor briefing, the human casually referenced an unofficial emotional adjustment that had prevented escalation. He did not name her directly, but he made sure the room understood it mattered. Eyes turned. Whispers followed. Her people were uneasy. Attention was dangerous, but something else stirred too. Curiosity, doubt. For the first time in her life, being seen did not feel like a threat. As the station lights dimmed into rest cycle, she stood alone by a viewport, watching stars drift past. The universe felt the same as it always had, vast, indifferent, but humans, she realized, were different. They did not just look at the galaxy and decide what mattered. They listened. And sometimes they heard the quiet ones. The attention did not fade. That surprised her the most. After the council session, she expected things to return to normal. She expected quiet looks, gentle warnings, and then the slow closing of doors. That was how her people handled risk. They waited. They endured. They survived by becoming small again. But the human did not forget. He did not push loudly or demand recognition. He did something far more dangerous. He kept asking questions, calmly and in public, that required her kind of answers. During one briefing, he asked why emotional dampening fields were calibrated the same for all species when emotional range was clearly not the same. During another, he asked why translators focused only on words and not intent. Each time, the room grew uncomfortable. Each time someone glanced at her, she felt the pressure immediately. Her people noticed it too. "You must be careful," her supervisor told her in a low voice. "Humans do not understand consequences yet." She wanted to agree. Fear was familiar. Fear was safe. But something inside her had shifted. She had felt what happened when someone listened, really listened, and once felt it could not be unfelt. The station moved closer to crisis without realizing it. Negotiations continued, but trust eroded quietly. A smaller species was being pushed aside, their concerns dismissed as inconvenient. Security reports remained calm, but emotional patterns screamed danger. The human noticed. So did she. He came to her observation station late in the cycle when fewer eyes were watching. He did not speak at first. He simply stood beside her, looking out at the moving stars beyond the glass. "You were right before," he said softly, "about the pressure." She kept her gaze forward. "Pressure does not always lead to action." He nodded. "But it always leads to consequences." She hesitated, then allowed herself to speak honestly. "If the council proceeds as planned, there will be no violence today or tomorrow, but the damage will last generations." "That bad?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Because they will believe they were ignored, and ignored pain becomes memory." He was quiet for a long moment. "Can you help me explain it?" he asked. Fear rose again. "They do not value explanations like mine." "I do," he replied simply. "And sometimes one is enough to start a crack." Against her instincts, she agreed. The next council session was larger than usual. Important decisions were being finalized. Smaller voices were already being edged out. The atmosphere felt brittle, like dry glass ready to shatter. When the human requested time to speak, several delegates showed clear irritation. He did not argue policy. He did not accuse. He did not threaten. He talked about people, about how alliances failed not because of numbers but because of unaddressed fear. About how history across human space was filled with conflicts that began as acceptable losses. Then he did something unexpected. He invited her forward. Every part of her wanted to retreat. She could feel the eyes of her people, sharp with warning, but she stepped beside him. He did not speak for her, he let her speak. Her voice was quiet, but the chamber was silent enough to hear it. She described what she felt, the growing resentment, the unacknowledged humiliation, the emotional fractures no censor tracked. She did not accuse anyone. She did not demand change. She explained consequences. Some delegates dismissed it at first. Intuition, emotion, unmeasurable things. The human asked one simple question. How many wars started because someone said that? Silence followed. Not agreement, not yet. But doubt had entered the room. Over the next cycles, changes began slowly. Minor adjustments at first. Additional consultations. Revised language in agreements. Small acknowledgments that cost little but meant everything. She became a regular presence in advisory sessions. Not celebrated, not praised, but listened to. Her people struggled with it. Attention still frightened them, but results were impossible to ignore. Conflicts eased. Smaller species engaged instead of withdrawing. The station felt lighter. Then the crisis came anyway. Not from anger, but from fear. A distant power issued an ultimatum. Compliance or exclusion. Trade routes would close. Resources would vanish. The council panicked. Old instincts returned fast. Sacrifice the smallest. Preserve the largest. Call it stability. She felt the wave of despair ripple through the station. Not explosive, resigned, worse than anger. The human stood up before the vote could begin. "No," he said. The word was not loud, but it was solid. They argued with him, pressed him, warned him. He did not back down. "This decision creates enemies that will outlast any benefit," he said. "We know it, you know it, and she has been telling us all along." All eyes turned to her again. She felt fear, then something else. Responsibility, she spoke. "If you choose this path," she said, "you will gain time and lose trust. You will survive now and bleed later. There is another option. It is harder. It requires you to listen to those you dismiss." The council demanded proof, guarantees, certainty. She could not give those. Neither could the human, but he offered something else. "Humans have survived worse odds than this," he said, "not by being strongest, but by standing with those who had nothing left to lose." The vote was close, closer than anyone expected. The decision changed, not perfect. Not clean, but inclusive. When it was over, the station felt different, not peaceful, but balanced. Afterward, she stood again by the viewport. The human joined her, keeping respectful distance. "You were brave," he said. She shook her head. "I was afraid." He smiled slightly. So were we. Bravery just means you spoke anyway. Her people approached her later, cautious, uncertain. You have changed things, her supervisor said. No, she replied. I was always this way. Someone finally listened. Life on the station did not become easy. Humans were not saviors. Mistakes continued. Conflicts still arose, but something fundamental had shifted. The galaxy had learned something about humans. They did not measure worth by volume or power. They noticed the quiet ones. They believed that unseen hearts still mattered. And for her, that made all the difference. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. She felt necessary.